obviously when you're in Europe, you were just spending money like you would never run out because Europe's expensive. And also that was the front of your trip where you felt like I have so much money, have so much money.
Yeah.
But it's just so much more expensive. But by the time you got over to Southeast Asia, like give an average, like this would be an average of what a hostel cost, what a meal would cost. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, Europe is way more expensive and even more expensive than I had thought. Like at this point, like people have been backpacking for so long, like hostels have really raised prices. I was paying anywhere from like 25 to I think the most I paid was maybe like 50 or 60 a night. For a hostel. Mm-hmm. And then where I really spent my money in Europe was
food.
I was eating good.
Yeah.
I don't have regrets there.
Okay.
I think the like absolute cheapest travelers, they're like doing a lot of like their own grocery shopping, like snack eating, like never going to restaurants. But like the food is such like a big part of the experience in Europe, and I ate good. Yeah. So I don't regret that. But I spent like nearly half my budget in like
in the first 6 weeks.
In the first 6 weeks in Europe. Also because I did find online a lot of people traveled with less money than I had, and I got a bit willy-nilly there. But so I was then on like a much stricter budget when I was in Asia.
Yeah.
But my goal was about $30 a day.
Yeah. Total.
For everything. Like,
oh my gosh.
Hostels, food. Excursions. Yeah. And sometimes I spent more, like I booked one flight with my friends to get to that island because we wanted to spend some more on snorkeling, spent some more doing some more surfing, spent more doing trek. But even including like all of my travel, all my trains and everything, I think I was definitely doing it for less than $40 a day. I would say probably I was like $30, $35 a day in Southeast Asia.
So for like on average, how much did your hostels cost in Southeast Asia?
$6.
$6 a day. Yeah. And then, I mean, genuinely, you sent me, I can't even count how many pictures of like, this is my dinner. And it was 10 containers of delicious food. Like every one of them looked better than the last. And it was so much food and it was so beautiful and vibrant and clearly and obviously delicious. And you'd be like, this whole thing was $4.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say $4 would be a slightly pricier one.
Yeah.
Places. It depends. Like Vietnam was super cheap. Thailand was a little more expensive. India was like incredibly cheap, but I was spending anywhere from like $1 to maybe like, if I'm like balling out, like $5
for a meal.
On a meal. And I was typically trying to book hostels that had breakfast included.
Oh yeah.
Just eating just like unreal street food. And I think Europe, a lot of the really good food, it's like you're wanting to kind of splurge on restaurants. But in Asia, like it's the street food. That's
of course.
So good. I never even got food poisoning or anything either. Like I wasn't precious. Some people are really precious about street food, and I'm just not. It did take, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks for my stomach to adjust to the
coming
new
from
conditions.
Like Europe.
Yeah. Things were not normal for a while. But I never got properly sick.
Okay.
And I even like would brush my teeth with the water. Like I wasn't.
Well, you got that from me. I don't. I don't
fancy about that stuff.
Any of it. Food preservation, just none of it. Yeah. Like those aren't my worries about the world.
But I ate so good. Like especially in Malaysia and Vietnam, which I think had my favorite food, I would just like get excited for when I would be hungry again, so I could eat more. And sometimes I just do it even if I wasn't hungry, because I just like
100%.
You're just passing just like street food stalls, and you're like, what is that?
I have to have it.
I want that so bad. Yeah, I gained like 15 pounds, and this is while I'm like hiking, doing yoga, walking miles and miles.
Totally.
Like.
Let's go back to yoga, because one part of your trip that was really special and kind of deterrent. Not deterrent, that's not the right word I'm looking for. It was an aberration to the rest of your trip. It was different from everything else, was that you had decided in advance that you were going to do a 200-hour yoga training. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because people do that here, but as you mentioned, that exact same certification and credentials in America or in certain places in the world is like 10 times what you paid.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
You went for a month.
Yeah, I was there for 5 weeks.
5 weeks, yeah.
where do I start here? I think
First of all, you were in India. I didn't say
Yeah.
where you'd gone.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we're kind of out of order.
Yes, we're out of order.
I'm just placed my brain
Yeah.
on the part of the story. Yoga teacher training, it's something that I had thought about doing, not in a very serious way, but something that I'd kind of imagined for a long time. I mean, I started practicing yoga when I was like 15 years old, and it just been like a really big part of my life and a really big part of my own healing, like my own journey of like getting close to myself, like being able to like sit with myself, healing like my own body, after just having like a terrible relationship with it as I was a teenager, which is not an original experience. But yeah, I think that in the past couple of years, I would be in yoga classes or be in meditation classes, and I would kind of find myself fantasizing about like being the teacher and kind of being in that role, which I think is such an honor to just have like a group of people really just trust you in that way and kind of, I don't know, kind of give themselves over to your guidance. And, but a friend of mine, Grace, she had talked about how like a travel friend of hers had gone to this program in India, to get her yoga teacher certification. And some people do their 200 hours over like a 6-month period.
Yeah.
But this is like a condensed experience. Like it's residential. We're there for like a month straight.
Yeah.
Doing 9 hours a day of classes.
Gosh.
Like it's unreal what I put my body through.
Yeah.
I mean, eating like strict like
Vegetarian.
vegan.
Oh, vegan. Yeah. It's a dry city, right? No booze.
Oh yeah, like you can't even get meat or get alcohol in the city. Rishikesh is this like gorgeous town in the Himalayas, right on the I always say it wrong, Ganges?
Sure, I don't know.
Right on like the Indian holy river, and it's just been famous for thousands of years for yoga and meditation. It's where a lot of really like influential like gurus and spiritual leaders have gone to study or to open up ashrams. And people from around the world come to visit the temples, to learn yoga, to meditate. And so it's just like a really special, like very
sacred,
spiritual, very like sacred town. My friends make fun of me and say that I was on my Eat, Pray, Love journey.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah, I was on
I'm sorry, but it kind of is.
It kind of was.
Because you were so indulgent in Europe, and then you're like a vegan, sober yogi.
And it's... Yeah, well, I mean, so Grace had told me that friend of a friend had gone to this experience, just had an amazing time. And there are lots of yoga teacher programs in India, but some of them are kind of shams. It's hard to get information about them. India it operates different than the rest of the world. It's really difficult to know what you're getting yourself into. And so just kind of knowing that someone could vouch for it made me kind of trust the program a little bit more. And then I don't know, something about it just kind of was calling to me, and I was really unsure. I was really nervous because I wasn't prepared. I mean, most
like
people
physically,
most people before they do a 200-hour program, like they're doing like some really intense training, really preparing their body, really preparing your mind for the challenge. And I ended up deciding this like a week before I went. I think a big part of why I went is because, I guess I'll get to this, I just climbed a mountain. And that was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my entire life, and like so empowering and so magical. And I just think I was feeling crazy after that. And I was like, I can do this. I can do this. Like I am capable of doing way more than I thought I was, and I can push my body way further than I thought I could. And so I just like full sent it, and I booked a spot, I think 2 weeks before the program started. And I just had like life-changing experience. I mean, it was hard. I mean, we would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Every day we would do an hour of breath work, like an hour of chanting, hour of meditation, 3 or 4 hours of yoga. We had anatomy class, and then we had a couple classes that would rotate. Like I got to learn some Ayurveda, which was really cool. And then just some like yogic philosophy, and some Sanskrit. And oh God, it was so hard. Like there are days where like you get on the mat and you just literally have to turn your brain off and be like, I'm just here and I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it again. And days where you literally cannot even move and that you are
so
staring
sore.
down more hours of yoga. And they teach yoga differently in India than they do in the US. They're tough. Yeah. They will push you.
I mean, I have a picture of you with one of your instructors and your body is genuinely folded in half. And I'm not joking.
Yeah.
It is folded in half and he's pushing you to fold it harder.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nothing in this picture makes any sense at all. I couldn't even tell, like, how are those your legs? It just didn't even make sense.
No, it was unreal.
Yeah.
The way I progressed. And we learned 2 types of yoga. We learned Hatha yoga, which is more spiritual. It's slower. It's much more traditional. It's like a more like ancient form of yoga. And then we did Ashtanga, which is more about like the like physical discipline of yoga. And it's like a strict specific series of like 100 poses or so that takes like an hour and a half. And some of the poses are unreal. Like you look at photos of people doing those poses and you're like, that would take 20 years of study to get to. And so we weren't able to do the entire series, but that was the most challenging element of my training. But it was also really empowering because I was able to like really track my progress. Like through doing that
by
series
the day.
over and over and over again. And my teachers were just amazing. Like they were so smart and so deeply knowledgeable. And I learned so much from them. And they were funny. And
You were the only American, right?
I was the only American. My class was actually very tiny. There were only 6 of us. It was my roommate, Rachel, who I adored. She was this Northern Irish girl. And thank God she was funny. Like I'm an earnest person and I can dive into this stuff, but like I needed someone funny to like giggle with. And she was my roommate. And every night just felt like a sleepover when you were a kid. We just like giggle all night. And we were able to kind of like laugh off.
Yeah. Bring some levity to it. It's intense.
Levity to it. Yeah, it's very intense. And so I was so happy to have her. And then there was this like insane like Italian guy who was there. And then this like 30-something German guy who just like became our best friend. Because I guess you travel and then your best friend's like a 35-year-old German. And then this Indian guy was in our program. And we were just together 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it just was...
Yeah, that's an incredible experience and accomplishment. You finished your 200 hours and you've talked about you like going on and getting the next round.
Yeah. 200 hours, obviously that's a lot of hours of study, but yoga is just such like an old and really like vast discipline. And we were learning like different types of yoga and we're also learning about meditation and learning about Hinduism and Buddhism. And like 200 hours, you're just barely scratching the surface. Like I was teaching full classes by the end, but I still feel like I have so much to learn. And so I would love to do a 500-hour program somewhere. Like halfway through my program, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to finish this. I don't know how I'm going to keep going. And then you kind of end up adjusting to the lifestyle. I think I'm just an adaptable person. I can kind of adjust to anything. And by the end, I wasn't ready for it to be over.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be cool to be at an ashram for maybe like 2 or 3 months and like really, really invest in that and get an opportunity to teach more. But yeah, I mean, I just never even like spent so much time even sitting with myself. Like, and it's not like Western yoga. There's not like playing music.
Right.
Like a lot of our meditation, they would just like leave us there just in silence for hours and hours. And a lot came up and it was the first 2 weeks especially were like really challenging because it's like, you're not just adjusting physically, like you're adjusting emotionally, mentally, like spiritually, to like spending so much time with yourself, to really like facing down a lot and kind of allowing so much to come up and then just really sitting with it. But for me, it was just like really transformative. And I was just like praying more than I'd like ever prayed in my life and felt just like incredibly connected to myself, to God, to life. And I just ended up just feeling, it's like I was on drugs. Like I ended up feeling just like euphoria by the end. Like I'd go on walks and I'd be like skipping and like looking at the butterflies and like singing to the mountains. And I just felt this like just deep like gratitude and just like trust in myself. And obviously you don't fully stay in that state without 9 hours a day of yoga and meditation. Yeah. But I think I just gained so much from that experience that I'm just like able to hold on to and come back to.
I love that you put that right kind of in the middle, sort of.
Yeah.
This intense, very like literally like sober-minded venture.
Yeah.
Solo.
I don't think I've been sober for 5 weeks since I started drinking. So
yeah, it's a long time.
I felt very clear. I felt great.
I bet, I'm sure you did. I mean, that's the optimal like workings of our
I was
body.
eating lentils every day.
Yeah,
beets,
I mean, vegan, sure.
chai.
Let's talk, because we're gonna have to wrap shortly. So I want to do like 3 things. So I'd like to hear you talk about climbing the mountain, because that was a really huge moment of the trip. I wanted to hear about what did you learn? Like, what did you, and I know that there's more than one thing. You don't just have one lesson and that's what you walk away with. But if you're going to distill it down, this is something that I learned through experience or observation or both. And then maybe like high-low. Okay. So let's start with the mountain. This is no joke.
3 more of my friends visited me when I got to Malaysia. We spent some time in Malaysia, went to Indonesia, and then we just kind of were hearing people were talking about this like volcano that they would hike, and it just seemed kind of cool. And we were like, I don't know, you end up being really ballsy when you're traveling with friends, because there's kind of diffusion of responsibility for the decisions that are made.
Sure.
And you also just feel like nothing can hurt me, nothing bad can happen. Like
My friends are here.
My friends are here.
Yeah.
And so we're like, sure, volcano. We like to hike sometimes. We've camped with each other. That sounds awesome. Let's do this. We find some local guide. We sign up for this 3-day trek. None of us have ever summited a mountain before. And we get it's another one of those travel days where we take a scooter and then a boat and then a van and then a whatever. We get to this small town. We're at this homestay at base camp. It's called Mount Rinjani. It's a active volcano in Indonesia. It's absolutely unreal. And we're seeing some of the other hikers, and we're like, these people have like some serious like hiker vibes. Like they're wearing like Patagonia.
Yeah.
And they have their own equipment.
They have hiking sticks.
And a lot of them, they had like flown to Indonesia to climb Mount Rinjani. And so we're in our room at the homestay. We're going to set out on our trek the next morning. And then I guess for the first time, we're like really like looking it up. And we find out that it's rated, its difficulty level is difficult, like on the scale.
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to be pretty advanced
good.
And know what you're doing to hike this. And I just remember reading this one blog post about Rinjani, and the title was it's something like, I've climbed 7 mountains. Rinjani nearly broke me. So we start freaking out, because that's when you realize what we've got ourselves into.
Yeah.
We all forked over like $250, which is incredibly cheap for like a hike like this.
But on your trip, it's a lot. Yes, exactly.
We're spending like $20 a day, right? We're starting to like freak out. We're also, 2 of my friends are feeling a bit sick, but we're just we're going to do this. We're going to commit to this. We're here. We're doing this. And we start our trek. We have this amazing local guide, Radu, who I just loved. He was
and it's just the 3 of you and him, or is there more?
It's us, and then there are like 4 other people in our group from like all over the world who are hiking with us. We just have the most amazing guide. He's hilarious. Our porters are hilarious. They're a bunch of like younger Indonesian guys.
Right.
And of course, we're hiking, fighting for our lives.
Yeah.
Like sweating, crying, falling,
carrying
bleeding.
Nothing.
We're carrying our day packs, but like the porters, they're carrying our tents, they're carrying our water and our food. Some of them are in flip-flops.
Totally.
Like our guides like smoking cigarettes and like singing songs. And then we're like threatening each other. We're like, you better keep walking right now. Like I'm like praying to God. Like, oh my God, it was so hard. So like the first day of the hike, you hike up to like the rim of the crater of the volcano. And then you're just like looking down inside of this volcano. You can see kind of the rock formations from its most recent eruption. There's this huge lake in there. There's hot springs. And we sleep like right on the rim. And it was just like, I get to the top, just burst into tears, of course.
Yeah.
Because it was just
So hard.
It was so. I mean, this is a 12,000 foot mountain.
Yeah.
It was so hard. I was in so much pain. I really can't tell you on anything in my life where I've had to push myself that hard. We're all feeling terrible.
Yeah.
And we know that we have to wake up at 2:00 in the morning to summit.
Oh my gosh.
Which is another 5 hours of hiking.
Yeah.
And the summit, it's like,
It's steep.
You're like you're scared to look behind you because you know if you trip backwards, you're
going down.
You're gonna die. Like it's like 45-degree angle. There's none of like the safety things built in that would be on any like hike in the U.S. And it's supposed to be really difficult. Famously, maybe only like half the people make it to the top.
Yeah.
And then you're not even hiking on solid ground. You're hiking on volcanic ash and gravel. So you have to have your hiking poles, which we almost didn't rent because we were like, we don't need those. Thank God we rented them. Like every single step you take, you're like sliding back. We almost didn't do it. We weren't like, I was like, I can't do it. And I talked myself out of it. I was like, you know what? Like it's like an ego thing. Why do I need to summit the mountain?
Sure.
Like the best view is from the crater rim. I'm looking inside of a volcano right now. And then Grace unzips my sleeping bag and she and Edie are getting up to go and neither of them have been feeling good. Like Edie had been feeling sick and she's like, I'm just gonna try it. And I'm like,
yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
All right. My friends are always inspiring me. I'm like, okay, we got this. And so I set out to summit. Well, it's a 5 hour, it takes me 6 hours. It's 5 hours. I like can't even express to you how hard it was. Like I was walking like 10 steps at a time. I was crawling on my hands. Like there's like, as you hike up, you're passing people who are just like laid out, like dying on the mountain. Like less than half of our group made it to the top. And then I just summited and we summited right at sunrise. And it was just incredible. It was like unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. We're completely above the clouds.
Yeah.
I can see the ocean like 50 miles away.
Yeah.
It was just like something.
Yeah.
I'm just like speechless trying to describe how magical and incredible it was. And I cried the entire time I was on the top. I'm crying in all of my photos, like holding my little sign, like Mount Rinjani. I'm just like.
Yeah. And your friends didn't make it.
Well, I wasn't going to air them out like that on the podcast, but yeah. And then we still had 2 more days of hiking after that because we hiked.
Because you hiked down.
We hiked down inside the crater, got to jump in the lake, swim in the hot springs, which was magical. Had to go back up.
Yeah.
And at that point, like I had never been sore like this in my life. The last day was so hard. The amount of breaks we were having to take. I couldn't walk for like 3 days after we finished this. Yeah. Like I had never been sore like that in my life, but it was just like, God, like I guess I get why people climb mountains. Yeah. Like it's so empowering and you just like push up like hard against the like growing edge of your own limits. And I just like didn't even know I was like capable of pushing myself that hard. Yeah. And then I think you just take that feeling and it just is contagious and it spreads into other parts of your life. And then
it was after that you went to yoga.
Yeah, almost immediately. I mean, well, me and Grace rotted in a surf town for like 2 weeks after that and just like ate curry and like laid on the beach, which we deserve. I feel. But yeah, and then I went to India.
It's amazing.
Then after India, I flew to Thailand, which I just loved so much. I think Thailand was where I kind of came up against some of the like complexities of travel and of being a part of like the tourism industry because I mean it's one of the more
tourism.
Yeah, it's like there's intense over tourism. It's one of the most like over traveled places in the world and there was a lot of I don't know like kind of like ecological destruction, inflation for people who lived there. And then there were whole towns where it's like, I don't know what they looked like before, but they had just ended up completely dependent on tourism in a way where they were really catering to the tourist gaze.
At the expense of their own culture.
At the expense of their own culture. And were almost kind of playing these like parodies of themselves, trying to like satisfy what people wanted. And yeah, I felt really complicated. I think there I really like kind of faced some of like the ethics of like traveling in this way, especially in a region of the world that's like so much poorer. And I talked about it a lot with my friends, and you meet a lot of people who are just like, oh, yay, it's so cheap here. Like, it's awesome. Like, I can just like live luxuriously and barely spend anything and just end up missing out on so much. And I don't know what the solution is, but I just tried to travel in a way that was like mindful and respectful, and where I was like educating myself about the places that I was. And I tried to like prioritize local experiences, local businesses, staying with homestays, and not just seeing it as like a cheap place to like party and like live in luxury, but like try and like really experience the culture and get to know people who are from there. I felt complicated about it, but I still loved Thailand so much. And Thailand was really cool because it was like the gayest country that I went to.
Yeah, you said that.
Which I wasn't expecting, but it's one of the only countries in Southeast Asia that wasn't colonized. I mean, like homophobia and transphobia, those are pretty like like Western kind of Christian values that were really like imported through colonialism, which you don't think of Asia as like a progressive place, but like a lot of those cultures, like, I don't know, that kind of came after colonization.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a trans culture in Thailand forever.
Yeah, the lady boys.
Yeah,
we went to some like insane drag shows, and then there were just like pride flags everywhere. And I saw a lot of like local like queer couples as well, which was so cool to see after being in like Muslim countries for a while. And then I just like made a bunch of gay friends, which was so awesome.
Sure. So of the whole trip, it was almost 6 months, right? Was it 5?
It was like 5.5.
Yeah, 5.5 months. What would you say, like, all right, this is maybe the primary thing, knowing that there's 100 things underneath it. Here's the primary thing I'm like walking away with. This is what I have learned or discovered or know about either myself or about the world or my future or just whatever, wherever it landed.
I mean, I think one was just, it was just really, really empowering to just realize that I get to do whatever I want with my life, and I get to be whoever I want to be. And there's so many different things that could look like. And I think I don't know, I've just been feeling like a lot of pressure and being kind of after graduating, and how do I want to explain?
To just do a more traditional, like, American path. Like, I went to this, and then I went to college, and then I went to my career, and then I'm going to build my career, and then I'm going to climb the ladder. And
it was just really freeing in that way. And then I think the other thing that this overwhelming feeling that I had by the end of my trip was just that I trust myself and I trust life, and I trust myself to like handle everything that is kind of thrown at me, everything that I get myself into. I trust myself to take care of myself. I just realized I was just so capable of doing so much. I don't know, not super eloquent.
No, but that's a huge takeaway.
Yeah.
A massive discovery, a massive self-discovery at a young age. Because that'll serve you no matter what environment you're in, relationship you're in, career you're in, location you're in. A sense of like trusting your own knowing, your own wisdom, your own capacity, your own North Star. I was in my 40s before I had any of that.
Yeah.
So that's not small. And
trusting my intuition is definitely the word.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get like decision fatigue while traveling like this, because you're just having to constantly make really big decisions and take care of yourself, and you're on your own. But I don't know. I really learned to like trust my own intuition while traveling, and we just left this like overwhelming, just like gratitude for life and trust in it, and just like sense of like goodness of people and of the world. And I just like want to see more of it. I don't feel so scared anymore of much.
Not that you were.
I guess I went on this trip in the first place.
Not that you were. Last, and we'll go in opposite order of the whole trip, all the things. High, low, but let's start with the low. We'll end on the high. What was the low part of the trip?
Okay, let me think.
Because there's no way to travel internationally for 5.5 months and not have a low moment or two.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say my low was just my like last couple of days of my trip. Let me think if that's
Is this
true.
like being in an interview where you're like, my worst character flaw is that I work too hard?
Yeah, literally. Well, because almost everything that was really challenging, or the times when I felt really alone or scared or almost like regretful, like I just like, without being corny, like I just can't even consider those lows because I just feel like
You learned something.
I learned so much, and like that's where like a lot of like the growth came in, and that's what kind of made like the magical, like euphoric parts of it just like so incredible. And I mean, that was part of kind of like the journey that I set out to have, was like to have those challenges. I think it ended in a rough, I was just in a rough place when it ended. Like I told you, like my phone had broken.
Yep. And had been broken.
It had been broken, but it had been okay because, well, okay, part of why I was acting like such a crazy person about my broken phone was that I was traveling with somebody that I had met in Bangkok. I met her like randomly in like an alleyway, and we started talking, and like 30 minutes later she was like, so where are you going next, and can I come? And I don't know, I was feeling crazy. I had a really good feeling, and I just said yes. And we ended up traveling together, went to Chiang Mai. She was on the back of my scooter when my phone broke. And then she was just like, what if you just
She's
didn't...
like, YOLO.
Well, she is just this like incredibly like spontaneous and like exciting and like romantic person. Like she tried to get on a random person's sailboat to sail from Morocco to South America.
Jeez.
Like she hitchhiked across South America for 7 months. She like bought a car for $200 and fixed it in Argentina. Like, so she of course was like, what if you just don't replace your phone? And we just see what happens. And she was like, I'll turn off my phone.
Oh my God.
How does this go?
She's like, your mom will be fine. Yeah. So you were in a very romantic state of mind. You were like, who needs a connection to the outer world?
Listen, I just was having a really magical experience and just threw myself into it. And I was like, well, I don't need a phone. I don't need, I just
bless it.
I don't know.
Jeez.
So yeah, all that to, anyways.
Yes.
I'm getting myself flustered.
You got a little flushed. A little flushed.
We traveled together for a month. She had to leave. I still had no phone, but I was like, I got this. Like I can do this. No phone, by myself. I drop her off at the airport in Hanoi. And her phone was broken too. So like there were times we figured it out with no phones. Like I was like, I can do this. I can do alone in Hanoi. I drop her off in Hanoi. I go outside the airport and I just like call a taxi like this style.
Carrie Bradshaw.
Right. Well, so for some reason I'm not able to like get a taxi, and like I get in one, and then he's like, wait, get out of my car. And I'm like, why do I have to get out of your car? It was kind of hard to get a taxi. I have to get some help. I talk to someone, and then the security guard comes up to me and he's like, that's the taxi mafia.
Oh boy.
He ends up helping me get a taxi. I get in. Typically people pay over this like app, but I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Like I don't have a phone right now. Can I pay you cash? And then I'm like, shit, well, I'm in this random man's car. Why'd I just tell him I don't have a phone? And kind of freaking out. He drives me to my hostel. I just told him to send me to the same hostel that I'd stayed in Hanoi before. Nothing was booked. I didn't have a way to book it. And I arrive because he doesn't kidnap me, which is really great.
Yay.
I was scared about that. And they're like, oh, we can't check you in because your visa's expired.
That's right.
And we will get fined by the government. And I'm like, what do you mean my visa's expired? My visa's, I have a month visa. I've only been here for 2 weeks. What do you mean? What do you mean my visa's expired? Turns out when you apply for a visa in Vietnam, which is a notoriously complicated visa, like originally I didn't even get into the story. I got turned away at the gate the first time I tried to fly into Vietnam. The person I was traveling with, I had literally convinced her to come to Vietnam with me. She had to go on the flight without me. I'm stuck in Thailand. I was also without a phone. That was another low.
Yes.
I got myself to Bangkok.
I hate all
got
this.
myself another flight. Found some sketchy website to get me a visa expedited. Got back to Hanoi. Anyways, but so I'm here. I'm by myself. They say my visa's expired. Turns out whatever random date you say you're going to leave when you apply for the visa is when it expires.
That's it.
Not after 30 days. They tell me to just go to immigration. I go to immigration. I have to like memorize the map to get there. I get lost a few times. And honestly, I was like giggling a little bit. I was like, I got this. It's fine. I'll just pay a little bit at immigration. Like, these are the adventures of like, I signed up for this.
Boy.
I go to immigration. They're like, you're just going to have to pay at the airport a fee when you leave. You're going to have to leave soon. We're going to get blacklisted from Vietnam. And I was like, no, I don't want to be blacklisted from Vietnam.
Sure.
But then I was like, can you maybe like write me like an approval slip for the hostel or something so they'll let me stay? And they're like, we don't do that. So I come back to the hostel. I try and beg a little bit. It doesn't work. And then this one guy kind of lowers his voice and looks around and he's like, there's this like old school place around the corner that doesn't check visas still. And they'll go host you. And so I just walk there with my backpack. Stay there for a night.
So you're in an off-brand hostel.
Yeah.
Your visa's expired.
Yeah.
Your person is flown away.
Everyone at my hostel
You don't have a
scary.
phone.
I don't have a phone. I end up just like taking a bus to this town out in the country, and I'm there and just like, I don't have a phone. My visa's expired. I had already gone over budget before my phone broke.
Yeah.
I have no way of checking my bank account. I'm just like,
it's time.
I guess it's time to go home. And I just wasn't ready. I wanted more. I wanted to stay longer. And it was time to go home. And it was just, it had expired. And so I get on my laptop, which barely works, by the way. My charger there was broken. I have to plug it in for 45 minutes before it'll turn on. I check flights, and I thought I'd at least have like a week or something. But for some reason, the cheapest flight is for literally 12 hours from then. So I didn't even have time to prepare emotionally. I was so overwhelmed. I didn't even tell anyone I was coming home except for you.
And even then, you were like, I'm going to be home tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah. And I got in the plane. Well, I mean, I got in the...
So it wasn't the goodbye you wanted.
I got in the bus, train, whatever.
Yeah,
it wasn't the goodbye that I wanted. And it was like a shock to the system to arrive home. Like I wasn't ready, and I was kind of struggling to adjust at first, but it was time to come home.
Okay. Well, you did it.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling it won't be the last. You got your eye on South America.
Gotta go to Brazil.
Yep. It's amazing, and I'm so happy that you got to do it. And what we'll do for anybody listening who's like interested and like, I'd like to see more, like peek in the window a little tighter on this, we'll put up some of the websites that he mentioned, like some of the blogs, some of the sites, some of the links, all the things like that can kind of begin to form paver stones like through the adventure, because they're all over the world, of course. And so, well, I'm so happy that you got to go. And I think it's probably, I kept telling you this when you were gone, but I'm like, you're going to be talking about this for your whole life. Like your whole life. You'll be telling your family and your people about these 6 months and what they meant to you and how they like altered your future, probably in some way. Like it's not that somehow this is going to bend the arc of your future a certain direction that it might not have gone had you not taken this trip. And I don't know what that even means yet. I don't know where that's going to take you, but I think this will have like a lasting impact on the way that you decide to live your adult life. And hopefully it's mostly here. No
promises.
And also sometimes gone.
Yeah.
But then back here. It's just putting in that 2 cents.
I'll always come back.
I mean, you got a lot of people here.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the show and talking
Thank you for
about
having
your
me.
incredible adventure.
Not sure why you guys all care, but glad
It's
you
interesting
do.
to
Glad
hear.
you're listening.
It's interesting to hear. Like a lot of us, like closer to my age, either didn't get a chance to do this, and that's most of us, or there will be a handful of people listening who absolutely did this, and they're like reliving their glory days.
Yeah.
Listening to it. Remembering those olden days of backpacking through Europe with no phone and no internet, no clue, and like traveler's checks. Like you don't even know what that is, probably.
No, I just laughed, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, just traveler's checks. So anyway, thanks for listening, you guys. Thanks for listening to the travel log. And we will post up a bunch of those things for you, a bunch of those little resources. Should you say, I don't have 6 months, but maybe I have one. And if you want to go over to Southeast Asia, you heard her say you can do it for $35 a day if you're willing to stay in the hostels with the youngs.
Most of them have they have little pods in the bunk beds. They got a curtain. You have your own little lights. It's almost like a private room.
Oh my God, it's almost like a private room. Yeah. Okay. There is a portion of backpacking that is uniquely suited to the young, but also the adventurous.
Listen, I met this amazing 70-year-old woman in one of my hostels where was I? In Turkey, who started backpacking after she retired.
Nice.
And she had been all throughout the entirety of the Middle East. And she had the most amazing stories. And she was so incredible. We all just like gathered around her like this.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. It's a place for everyone. Okay. Thanks for being here today.
Cheers.
I love you.